What is it the Raiders will have to do to be able to maximize Ashton Jeanty's talents his rookie year? Yeah, that conversation has resurfaced. That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 21st, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, that's great. You're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, that's great as well. We definitely appreciate both. The show continues to grow each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes on the YouTube page, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter. You can hit him up at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well, as many of you do, at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. And trust and believe, you want to be a part of the show and you can't for some reason call in or text in. Maybe you're overseas. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, that's cool. You could always hit us up by Twitter as well. Again, at Ari Produces and at your boy Q254. And as you've noticed over the past couple days, have definitely had a few tweets get into the show as well. So we'll hear from you, your calls, texts, tweets, all that good stuff coming up. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Segment number 2, a conversation that we had before the draft took place, before the Raiders drafted Ashton Jeanty, number 6 overall in this past draft. How can they maximize his talent? Are they ready? Are they built to be able to get a Saquon Barkley type performance out of him? A Derrick Henry, a Josh Jacobs, a Christian McCaffrey? Are this Raiders team, are they built? Are they ready to be a team that can maximize the talent that he brings to the table? That conversation has popped back up, and I'll let you know why I believe that they will maximize his talents. Got a handful of reasons why I do believe that. We'll break that down coming up. Segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, as we do each and every day, we give you the news and notes with the silver and black and around the National Football League. So as we start things off, I want to really give a big congratulations to the Hall of Famer, Charles Woodson. He gets a minority ownership of the Cleveland Browns. Adam Schefter tweeted this out on Tuesday. Hall of Famer Charles Woodson was approved at today's league meeting as a limited partner to the ownership group for the Cleveland Browns. Diana Rossini from The Athletic late last week tweeted out, Hall of Famer Charles Woodson is set to purchase a 0.1% stake in the Browns from the Haslam family. The sale is contingent upon Woodson agreeing to similar broadcasting restrictions to Raiders owner Tom Brady, removing his name, image, and likeness from the businesses he is involved in. And the cool thing about this is I just saw Charles Woodson on Saturday night at Allegiant Stadium at the Silver and Black Gala, and after, asking how he was doing, asking his thoughts on the Raiders and just the positive vibes around him, I asked about this because it was out there late last week from Diana Rossini, and he had mentioned that he kind of wished that it wasn't out because it wasn't past the finish line. He said it's something that obviously is in the works, but nothing is final. Nothing is a done deal at that stage of the game. They still had another hurdle to overcome. Clearly, the hurdle was getting the owners to sign off on it and vote on it, just like they had to vote on Tom Brady becoming a minority owner of the Raiders. They did that on Tuesday. Now he's going to be part of that minority ownership. I also asked him about the name, image, and likeness part that Diana Rossini put in the report. And I said, hey, does that mean that you have to, remove your name from the Woodson Bourbon Whiskey? And he said, the funny thing about that is the same thing happened while I was still playing when I first got involved in the wines. Right. Remember, of course, Woodson's got his own wines out, and he said that no NFL player, current player, was allowed to have their name on an alcohol, and he had it on the wines. And so he said we were able to overcome that. If this does go through and this pops up, we'll find a way to overcome it as well. So to me, it doesn't sound like he's trying to take his name, image, and likeness off of anything while still being a 0.1% stake owner in the Cleveland Browns. And that's awesome. He's a guy from the Ohio area, so I'm happy for him to be able to go and step into and take a step closer to ownership. But what I like about this is, as you're seeing Tom Brady, part of ownership, Richard Seymour, part of ownership, Charles Woodson, part of ownership, of course, Shaquille O'Neal's part of ownership. LeBron James at some point is going to have NBA ownership. Magic Johnson with the Commanders, they have all this ownership. What I like about this is, instead of sitting there and sitting back on the sidelines and and crying about, well, there's not this kind of representation when it comes to coaches, GMs. The great John McClain tells me all the time, and especially when they go through the coaching carousel and there's only a couple maybe minorities that are hired as coaches, or maybe there's not any at all in a certain coaching cycle. And of course, they've tried to incentivize going out and hiring a minority. Maybe that's a promotion. All of a sudden you get draft picks. And, I've always felt like you shouldn't have to incentivize, a guy to hire somebody that's a minority. Well, what you can do is take control of the narrative yourself. Be part of the ownership, right? People hire who they're comfortable with. So if you're part of the ownership, guess what? You have somewhat of a say if that's how your ownership works. And if it doesn't work right now, and I'm sure at a 0.1%, I'm sure Charles Woodson's stake in the Browns isn't going to sit there and sound like he's making decisions on who's being hired, but that can grow. You got your foot in the door. Now you have an opportunity, right, to become part of ownership, not just part player, but hey, this is the league that I am a Hall of Famer in, right? I became a Hall of Famer like C. Wood. So now not only do I want to do that, but I take this very seriously. I want to be part ownership, just like Tom Brady's doing with the Raiders. So now this can evolve. So at some point, the Jerry Joneses won't be around, right? The Mark Davises won't be around. The Haslams won't be around. And I'm not trying to kill anyone off, but we all know the cycle of life. We know what it is. So at some stage of the game, as things evolve, you can become ownership. And when you're ownership, guess what you do? You hire who you're comfortable with. So instead of, sitting on the sidelines, complaining and crying, and, the funny thing about it is, and this is a much less scale, but it's what I think of whenever I think how I got to Las Vegas. Right, being at ESPN Central Texas, and I was trying to get to Las Vegas, and I was building relationships with the program director at ESPN Las Vegas. Then all of a sudden he left, and another guy got hired, and I said, okay, now I got to build a relationship with him. And then he left, and I got frustrated and said, well, now I got to build another relationship with this person. They had 3 different program directors in place at ESPN Las Vegas before I got hired. And finally, I said, what, the hell with it, and threw my hands up and said, I'm not going to try to build a relationship with the next guy. I'm going to try to be the next guy, right? Instead of trying to wait for someone else to get hired and build that relationship, I said, what, I know what I'm doing. I've been there, done this. I got plenty of skins on the wall. I've got this under my belt. I know what to do. And again, much lesser scale than ownership in the NFL, but it's the same thing. I took control of the narrative instead of, allowing someone else to have to hire me. I took control and said, I'm going to end up being the guy that is actually in charge of hiring others outside. So, was able to sell myself to the people that were in place to hire folks at Lotus Broadcasting, the ESPN Las Vegas, Raider Nation Radio, all that, and told them why I would be great for that job. Got the job, and then I didn't have to worry about building relationships. All I have to do is maintain what I already know and keep it up. So again, different scale, but I love the concept, and I love to see all these different former athletes investing in stuff like ownership because they know how long that can go. Not to mention, Charles Woodson has kids, so his ownership continues to grow. Well, now all of a sudden they have something that's a great investment that he's part of, right? I think it's great. And you see how the NFL goes. You see that we always talk about, it cycles and it's all about relationships and, you can call it whatever you want to, but it's about time that some of these athletes, instead of just taking the money, running, and you never hear from them again, take the money from the league, invest really well, and then also get part of ownership. That is a big deal. That's something that I get excited about, and that's why I give a big salute to Charles Woodson and all the guys out there, former athletes, that are taking part of and trying to be part of the solution, right? Results-based business, right? And instead of just complaining about the problem, well, what's the solution? And they're coming up with solutions. And I like it a lot. Coming up in segment number 2, we're going to talk about Ashton Jeanty and how the Raiders can maximize his talent. Before we do that, though, I want you to hear from John Spytek. I mentioned that he's a guest on the NFL Spotlight Show with my guy Ari Meirov from 33team.com. It came out on Tuesday, and trust and believe, I was up early watching it. Really good stuff. He's actually going to be a guest on my radio show this afternoon, Unnecessary Roughness, Raider Nation Radio 920 at 3 p.m. Pacific time, to talk about his interview with GM John Spytek. But one of the questions he was asking him about was Ashton Jeanty and the reason why they felt so comfortable in a very deep running back class, taking him at number 6 overall like they did. Check it out.
What was it about Ashton and picking him at number 6 in a deep running back class that we had this year? What was the reason that you guys felt comfortable taking him there that high?
Yeah, I want to be clear to everybody listening that we did not pick Ashton Jeanty because of Jack Spytek, just so we're all know. That was just a fun anecdote to it. I would start with the person. Ashton's an incredible competitor, and I would describe him as a humble superstar. I went to the pro day and watched him move through that building. I mean, that was as important to me as just him, on the field, jumping over bags, catching balls. I mean, I knew he could do all that stuff, but to see him move through the building, I always think of running backs as like Bucky Irving last year. The first man can't tackle me. And Bucky proved that. And Ashton has great feet. He has great vision. He's a nightmare to tackle in the open field for linebackers and DBs. And when you come up, 31-ish yards short of Barry Sanders, you've got my attention. And, I think he just made sense for us. Because he's a great person, he's productive. He does all the things you want a running back to do. We want to be a physical and violent football team. We want to be somebody that dominates the line of scrimmage. And I've got a lot of belief back to my Michigan days. Like, it starts with the run game. And, Baker Mayfield had a great year in Tampa last year, throwing for 45 touchdowns, 4,000 yards. I mean, we were a top 5 run offense too. So there's a lot of throws that open up when there's a stud running back standing in the backfield, and you got a legit run game too. And so he just made a lot of sense for us from a lot of different ways.
So just a little bit of the conversation that Ari Mayrod from the 33team.com had on his show NFL Spotlight with GM John Spytek. Again, I encourage you to go check it out. Wherever you found this podcast, you can find that podcast. YouTube, wherever, like just the audio version, whatever the case may be. Really good stuff with Ari, and of course he's going to be a guest on my radio show this afternoon, so hopefully be able to bring some really good stuff to the table from that. But we'll talk all things Ashton Jeanty, how the Raiders will be able to maximize his talent his rookie year. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, talked about hiring earlier in the segment, right? Let's tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the show, and that is LinkedIn Talent Solutions, LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you, and that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clocked out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. So I'm sure you're wondering right now, okay, Q, well, how does it work? Well, I'm glad you asked. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And I got a pro tip for you. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture. You'll double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Right now, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into the conversation of not if the Raiders are going to maximize Ashton Jeanty's talents his rookie year, but why and how will they be able to do that? And why did this conversation even resurface? I was floating around on social media on Tuesday preparing for my radio show on Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, and I came across something from Fox Sports 1, FS1, First Thing First. Now, let me tell you, I'm not a First Thing First guy, not even an FS1 guy, right? I really don't have time to watch a whole lot of these different shows. I'm usually busy preparing for a show, which is a blessing. But I saw First Thing First, Nick Wright's on it, Cruz Broussard's on it, but also former NFL offensive lineman Jeff Schwartz. And they were talking about the Raiders. Nick Wright, who's a Chiefs fan, was like, I think they're going to be good. They might even be a playoff team, and it hurts me to say that because I'm a Chiefs fan. Chris Broussard thinks that, they'll still be 3rd or 4th in the AFC West because the division's tough. That's, there's no slight to those guys with saying that because there's obviously a lot of questions that are going to be had this year. But then Jeff Schwartz brings up the Raiders and the way that the team is built and Ashton Jeanty, and that there's certain teams that are built to maximize the talents of a Saquon Barkley, of a Derrick Henry, of a Christian McCaffrey, of a Josh Jacobs. And the Raiders, well, they're not one. Here's Jeff Schwartz.
The running back acquisitions that have worked most recently in the NFL, they have one thing in common. The offense is complete, and they add the running back into the offense. Look at Philadelphia. Look at the 49ers. Look at what the Lions have done in the draft.
Baltimore.
This is Baltimore with Henry. This is not the case. So if they don't add to offensive line, to wide receiver, I think Jeanty's really good. I do like the Chip Kelly offensive coordinator pairing with the run game. That's what he does the best. Like, that's just going to be a fun run game they're going to have in Vegas. But we have not seen a running back added to a roster like this and had success like they want early in his career.
So there you go. You heard what Schwartz had to say. Again, all respect to him and the rest of the cast there on First Thing First, talking about the Raiders. I love it that they're talking about the Raiders, and I try to bring anything to the table that I find. A lot of times lately it's been really good, but I'm not just looking for rainbows, puppy dogs, Girl Scout cookies, and all that good stuff, right? I'm not looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I'm looking for whatever, because I want to make sure that you're always aware of what's being said. So there he's talking about they're not going to get the most out of Jeanty that they want because they're not built like the Eagles or the 49ers or the Baltimore Ravens or teams like that. And I'll say where that's been a conversation that we've had, and that was a question that I threw out there well before the Raiders ever drafted Ashton Jeanty, and we had our discussions about it. One, and it's funny, I asked John McClain about it when he was a guest on my radio show on Tuesday afternoon. He said, first of all, Q, he's so talented that he's going to make the team that much better. He's going to put them in those type of conversations. He said, it's not like they had some stellar offensive line at Boise State. How many of those guys got drafted? Right? And so that was a great point by John McClain. And, well, he's the great John McClain. We call him the general for a reason, right? And so that was one element. But also, first of all, Pete Carroll and the running backs that he's had throughout the course of his career, going back to college, the NFL. Obviously, we think of Marshawn Lynch, but think about what he did with the running game at USC. Lendale White, Reggie Bush. Yeah, a couple of pretty good running backs, right? I mean, he's always had a really good run game and knows how to use it to the point where it's something that he wants to lean heavily on. Right? And then you bring in the offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, who had, 2,000-yard rushers last year at Ohio State. And I get it. This is the NFL. It's different than college ranks. We understand that. We know that it's going to be tougher. You're getting the best of the best each and every week. There's no doubt about that. But Chip Kelly, for his offense to go, what does he need? A running game. Right? When he became a head coach in Philadelphia, he was using the running game. Right? It was a little, just not really conventional, the running style. And of course he had the super fast up tempo offense, which he's obviously evolved from that. So I don't expect to see that, but just with his creativity, that's going to help, right? Chip Kelly is not Luke Getsy. Chip Kelly is not some of the questionable offensive coordinators that the Raiders have had over the past. So, Chip Kelly is just licking his lips thinking, okay, I got an opportunity to coach up this guy, Ashton Jeanty. Now, one question about Chip Kelly and him coaching up Ashton Jeanty that's brought to my attention and has been a conversation piece is him changing Ashton Jeanty's rushing style, right? The way that he ran at Boise State, he was basically standing straight up and down like Le'Veon Bell did for many years, right? And was very successful with that. So he wants him to be in more of a traditional running back stance. And so Ashton has said that he's going to do that, at least for now. And he's going to try to prove who he is, earn his voice, and then maybe push back a little bit. But right now, as you've seen videos floating around social media from OTAs and rookie minicamp, that he's switched up his style. What I like about that is they're doing it now. So if he's comfortable with that moving forward, cool. They can go with that, and that could be how it is. If not, if they don't feel like they're going to be able to maximize his talent, hey, you know what? Just let the young man do what the young man does. Right? I'm actually going to have Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday used to be a former running back in the league. He was very adamant about not changing Ashton Jeanty's style. He's actually going to be on my radio show as well today, coming up at 3:30 Pacific time. So I'm looking forward to that. Going to have a star-studded affair, right? Ashton Jeanty's trainer at 2:30, Ari Mayrov at 3, and then the former running back Doc Holliday on the show as well. So a lot of good stuff coming up on my radio show. But that's a whole nother conversation, just a little bit of preview. So we'll see how that switch happens, and if they stick with that or not. If they stick with it, clearly they feel good about it moving forward and he feels comfortable with it. But if not, I'm sure they'll have time to switch back, which is good that they're doing it now as opposed to waiting until the preseason. Also, what I think is going to help maximize Ashton Jeanty's ability is the quarterback. They don't have questionable quarterback play now. They've got a guy in Geno Smith who threw for over 4,000 yards a year ago. So he's a guy that can stretch the field. He's a guy that's very accurate. He's a guy that has an opportunity to win games with his arm. So now you can't just load up the box and say, yeah, I dare you to throw the ball. I dare you. Like when the Raiders had Gardner Minshew, nobody worried about Gardner Minshew, right? They could load up the box and say, yeah, okay, good luck. When they had Jimmy G, nobody worried about Jimmy G. They could load the box and say, yeah, okay, good luck, Josh Jacobs. Try to run against that. And it was hard for him to do that, right? Because they didn't have a threat at the quarterback position. Now they do. And they have a guy like Brock Bowers. They have a guy like Jacoby Myers. They have Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton Jr. who can stretch the field. They've got Big Mike. They've got weapons to throw the ball too. But most importantly, they have Geno Smith, who's a very accurate quarterback. And if he wants to, he could put the ball between his arms, tuck the ball and run as well. if he has to. But he shouldn't have to do that as often, but he's still a threat. So Geno Smith is going to be a big help. Players also on the team know how good Ashton Jeanty could be if they do their jobs. If they do their jobs. Have you ever been in a situation where you're around someone that's really good at what they do? And you're like, man, I got to really live up to, I got to step my game up to make sure that this guy is maximized and this guy doesn't look at me like, hey, man, you're the weak link, right? I mean, when I saw Jackson Powers-Johnson greet Ashton Jeanty on that social media piece that the Raiders put out when he got to the facility for the first time, he said, hey, Jackson, I'm your center. I look forward to blocking for you. Like, that already let it be known how excited he is. Well, that's gonna have that same feeling around the rest of the team. If we get this guy rolling, how good could we be, right? That's another factor why I believe that they're going to maximize his ability. But finally, and probably most importantly, is him, Ashton Jeanty, his work ethic, his want to, his ability to be great, right? The way that he's not settling, the way he's training, the way he's working his tail off, right? What he's willing to do to be great. I mean, even the fact of, okay, I'll change up my style rushing, because the coach wants me to do that. Like, his willingness to soak everything up, his wanting to be great. Similar to Max Crosby. Remember when Max was drafted as a 4th-round pick and he had to fight and scratch and claw just to make the roster, to the point where in a preseason game he breaks his hand and he puts a club on it and gets back out there? Now, Ashton Jeanty's not concerned about not making the team, but he knows the expectations now of being in the NFL, being drafted in the top 10, being the guy that's expected to, carry a big, heavy load. And you know what? He's there for it, right? He's got the discipline from his father in the military background, right? They moved around, and he's been A1 since day one, no matter where he's at. Also, and I thought this was intriguing, and I said his trainer, Ronnie Braxton, he's actually going to be on my radio show this afternoon. He's from RealSuperiorAthletics.com. He's a trainer out of Texas. I don't know if you've seen those videos where Ashton, quickly after being drafted by the Raiders, was out there training in the rain, training barefoot against the elements. And, well, he actually was asked about him, Ronnie Braxton. He was asked about Ronnie Braxton when he was drafted and what he's helped bring to the table. But I thought that the breakdown and what Ronnie had to say about what they do, their methods, the way that they train, and why they train the way that they do, including having them train in the rain with barefooted, what that all was all about. I thought that was great, and is going to also help with with Ashton Jeanty being the very best version of himself his rookie year. Check it out.
You have to understand how not to make a mistake. And when you're working on balance drills on a BOSU ball, or you're catching footballs, working on peripheral vision, working on proprioception, working on strength, working on speed, working on skill, all of those things become the intangible of make the athlete the athlete. So we try to take a holistic approach on everything we're doing, but sometimes you do hone in on things like, backhand catching, peripheral rotation. So those are the things that I try to increase with every rookie, is increase the eyes. Talk about what do you see, talk about what you feel, talk about how you see. Right? Because the eyes is the gateway to the heart. If the eyes see perfect, everything see perfect. It's easy to separate the real from the fake. It's easy to separate the real from the fake. And I done seen fake Super Bowl champions. I done seen fake ones. So when it come time to when you talk about training in the rain and the mindset of the game, like, we flip a switch. And in the shield, you're protected. Out here, when you're preparing to be inside the shield, it ain't no protection. So that's where when you see us training in the rain and it's 40 degrees and it's time to prepare your mind to go into Green Bay, to go into Seattle, to go into Pittsburgh, to go into Cleveland, when the elements are not working in your favor. You feel me? And when you look at these facilities, as beautiful and nice as it is, right, you feel me? Don't get it twisted. Like, for 1 second, like, we can flip a switch on you real quick. I feel like Ashton will walk right in and win the Rookie of the Year award. The work still got to be done. It's got to be put in.
I thought that was great, right? And I love how he said, I've seen a lot of fake Super Bowl champions, right? And you hear what Ronnie had to say at the end, that he believes that Ashton Jeanty is going to be the Rookie of the Year, the Offensive Rookie of the Year for the Raiders. Now, obviously, he's got to stay healthy, right? Everything's out the door if he's not healthy his rookie year. But from all understanding and what we could talk about at this stage of the game is the expectations of him being healthy. And, he's a guy that has trained him, understands what he's all about, and I love the fact that he's talking about the elements, right? I mean, why he's training in the elements that he is because in the NFL, nothing is perfect. It's not always going to be indoors in like 70 degrees, perfect weather, perfect, turf, grass, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you're going to have to deal with adversity. And so not only are they training the body to deal with adversity, but they're training the mind to deal with adversity. So if he goes in there with that proper mindset, I think sky is the limit for Ashton Jeanty. So I know that there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be a lot of people that believe that the Raiders aren't going to be able to maximize his talent because they're not on the same page as the Eagles, as the Ravens, as the Packers, as the 49ers, when they were maximizing their running backs, even as late as last year when Saquon goes for over 2,000 yards. But I will say for all those reasons that I gave, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Geno Smith, the players knowing what they can expect from Ashton Jeanty on the team if they do their job, and more importantly, him, is the reason why his talents will be maximized his rookie year with the silver and black. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts, even a tweet, will close out the show in segment number 3 coming up next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. And if you want to tweet at us, at your boy Q254, at RA Produces, we'll try our best to get your tweet on the show as well. So we'll start off with a call from Bo in the 530, calling to talk about the rest, the conversation that we were having on Tuesday about the Raiders being ranked 32nd according to sharpfootballanalysis.com, how the NFL didn't do them any favors when they made the schedule because they're not going to have the proper rest in 2025. Here's Bo in the 530.
What's up, Q? It's Bo from the 530. I'm just calling real quick. I'm listening to your Tuesday show, and you said that the analytic thing that you read said that the 49ers were the last team to have like the worst schedule amount of rest, or they were the last team to have like the worst amount of rest, and that's a little concerning to me, only because last year the 49ers were absolutely riddled with injuries, and it really hurt their season. And I'd hate to see the Raiders not get enough rest and end up with a bunch of injuries from flying back and forth, not having proper home games. And I know that some of the games aren't that bad. Like, relatively speaking, the schedule is not bad. You're absolutely right about that. But not being able to rest after games is definitely a concern. I don't want to see anybody get injured. So, yeah, that's all I got to you. What do you think about it, man? As always, love the show. And just win, baby. Thanks.
Well, thanks so much for the call. And, my big question is with, the injuries that the 49ers dealt with, was that due to lack of rest? Did the injuries hit first? I mean, they were awful. They made this analytical piece seem like it was spot on, right? And again, that's why, it's something I wanted to bring to the table. I don't necessarily sign up for all analytics. I respect them. I know where they're coming from. I know there's some kind of backing to that. There's some truth to it. But I also have done sales before, and I know that you can dance numbers and dress numbers up to tell the story that you needed to tell. So I feel like the 49ers, when they suffered a bunch of their injuries, a lot was in training camp. Remember Brandon Ayuk? He sat out for most of the time trying to get a contract extension. Christian McCaffrey was injured like all year. Trent Williams at the left tackle position, he was out trying to get a contract. Like, there was a lot of side stuff going on with the 49ers. And then all of a sudden they had a terrible year and they dealt with injuries. So I don't know how much of it was rest related and how much of it was 49ers side conversation related. But I do respect it, and that's why I brought it to the table. I know that a few people had hit me up about it, so I figured it was a conversation that we can have. Thanks so much for the call, Bo. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, speaking of Twitter, at jarhead_73 hit me on Twitter in a response to the same conversation about rest and, the Raiders' schedule and if the NFL didn't make favors. He said, look, the schedule doesn't get much better. The only negative is it comes too soon to take advantage of it. This is a 2 to 3 year reboot. Year 1 offseason, they did well on offense, but never going to fix it all. Year 2, expect some turnover, focus on D, maybe a rookie quarterback. Year 3, compete for real. So he's not worried about the schedule. He's not worried about the rest or lack of rest. He's worried about, the good schedule came a little too early, and the Raiders might not be able to take advantage of it. And so that's obviously a conversation. We talked about taking advantage of Ashton Jeanty and his talents in segment number 2, right? Everything goes with it. right? The Raiders only did a little bit in free agency. They're trying to fill a lot of voids with young guys. We know Pete Carroll wants to work with the young guys. John Spytek, he had a reputation for turning over the roster in Tampa Bay and making it the youngest roster and getting so many contributions from guys that were all homegrown, and that's exactly what they want to do with the Raiders. So Jarhead, at Jarhead_73, could be onto something that it's going to be 2 to 3 years, and then you need a schedule like that to be able to take advantage of. I've said it before, I don't think this is a 10, 11-win team year one. I think more of an 8-win team, which is double what they did last year, and I think that that's a great start and lets you know that things are off to a good start, but there's still more holes that they've got to fill. So Jarhead, thanks so much for that tweet. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Eric, the Rockin' Raider in Phoenix. He's also calling to talk about the rest and the net rest days off, and he has his thoughts on the conversation from sharpfootballanalysis.com. Here he is, Eric, the Rockin' Raider in Phoenix.
Hey, Q, what's up? It's Eric, the Rockin' Raider here in Phoenix, Arizona. Got done listening to your show this morning on Tuesday. My first listen every day. Hey, Q, you were going over the net schedule for time off. It was some fantasy stat that Warren Sapp, I guess, is promoting. I heard it. I still think it's just no news, off-season type news. So no news is good news. Our schedule's great. I don't read too much into that at all. I appreciate you sharing it, but I got us going at a 9-8 this year, 9-8 record. I think we can do that, whether we make the playoffs or not. 9-8 is where I sit with it. Q, I need you to please do me a favor. I called a couple of weeks ago about Pete Carroll and his class at USC and the Rich Eisen podcast where he was a guest on at that class. It's amazing stuff, Q. Is there any way you can deep dive more into Pete Carroll and his teaching? He also wrote a book years ago. I'm fascinated with the way this guy thinks and what he puts together. I'm so excited to have him leading our team. And anything you can do to bring Rich Eisen or anybody from that class on your show would be appreciated, Q. Anyway, we do appreciate everything you do. Eric the Rockin' Raider in Phoenix, thanks for everything. I'm out. Have a good day. Bye.
Eric, thanks so much, my man. I'm with you. I think the schedule is great compared to other seasons, but I definitely wanted to bring that to the table. Again, as you know, you listen to the show long enough, I'm not big on analytics. I'm big on the eye test. And, the thing about it is I think that it's not always going to be just the eye test is going to tell you all the answers and not just analytics. I feel like that there's a good blend of both. I just know where my strength is. My strength is on the eye test and being able to understand what's going on. And I don't care if it's the NFL. I don't care if it's the NBA. Like, I know for the basketball, for example, like one of the big conversations in the playoffs were the Celtics shooting all those threes. And I was like, look, I get it. I'm not asking them to change who they are as a team, but I know bad basketball when I see it. And at some point, if your shots aren't dropping, take it to the rack, right? You can get a bucket, you can get an and one opportunity. Sometimes you just need to see the ball go through the net, and then you can go back out to the 3-point line. And that's how I am when it comes to the NFL. I understand what I see with my eyes, right? Again, the math problems, I get it. Analytics does play a role. There's a reason why there's an analytics specialist on every coaching staff. I'm just not that guy. So I thought it was important to bring that to the table, but I'm with you. I think the schedule's great. It's one of the best ones I've seen in a long time. And I think if the Raiders have success with it, it's not going to be because of rest or not rest or they have an advantage of rest. It's going to be because they're a really good team. And I think that they should take advantage of it to at least show that they're trending in the right direction. As far as Rich Eisen and what he saw at USC, I've reached out, and normally it's pretty easy to get a hold of Rich Eisen, but he's actually in a transition period right now where he's returning to ESPN after many, many years gone from ESPN. So he's in a transition period. I don't know if he's doing any interviews anytime soon. There's a lot going on with ESPN. Stay tuned. So I'll just throw that out there like that. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get him anytime soon, but I do know he's making a return to ESPN, and at some point, I'm sure I'll be able to get a hold of him. So thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from 360 Raider. Says, hey, Q, 360 Raider here, just chiming in to give my 2 cents worth about the tush push rule. Personally, I'm fine with it. At the line of scrimmage, however, I don't like it beyond the line of scrimmage. If the ball carrier's forward momentum stops, then the play should be whistled dead before the defense could take him to the ground, avoiding injury. But wait, here comes Reggie, tush push, and Billy Bob, big boy, slamming into the back of the pile, moving it forward after the runner's forward momentum has stopped. Doesn't seem fair to the defense. Therefore, in my opinion, if the ball carrier's forward momentum stops, then no pushing on anyone's tush should be allowed downfield. Have a good one, Q. That's from 360 Raider. And I understand your thoughts on that one. And we've seen that many times where all of a sudden there'll be some momentum. It'll be like a 4 or 5 yard gain. Then all of a sudden it'll stop. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's a big push because the guy's still up on his feet, and he'll pick up another 4 or 5 yards. There could be a fine line there. I'm always under the understanding that, if you can't stop the tush push, then that's on you, right? And Green Bay has really spent a lot of time trying to get this removed. I do think it's going to end up getting banned. I know Roger Goodell doesn't like it. Normally what Roger Goodell wants is what Roger Goodell gets, and I do believe he's going to want that out of there. So we'll find out. They vote on that today. They also vote on the playoff reseeding today, so we should find out something sooner rather than later, and we'll see if it even matters, right? But it does sound like it's got some momentum to getting banned from the game. So thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Got a call from Raider Dougie in Central Cali. He's calling to talk about the Raiders' defense, and in particular the linebacking position and the cornerback room. Here he is, Raider Dougie in Central Cali.
Hey, Q. Hope your day's going well. This is Raider Dougie in Central Cali. Just wanted to chime in real quick on, the status of the defense going into the year. Still a long off season, but, I've been kind of thinking about it, talking with my fellow Raider Nation about what the expectations are this year, and I know we'll get into that as the off-season goes on. But I don't feel like the linebacker position is really talked about enough in terms of, how unsure we are about it, because if you really think about it, Devin White, Amari, Gain, and even the guys we drafted, even Jalen Smith, none of these guys started last year for any team. They did not start last year. I feel like this defense is going to cost the team a lot of games this year, and I'm really worried about the corner room. I think about it like this: if they kept Spillane and somehow got Jalen Ramsey, think about how much differently we'd be feeling about this season. And I know we want to develop the young guys, but Porter's only played the corner position 7 games, started 7 games. That's not a lot. I don't think he's going to be a big impactful player this year. Like people, maybe think he is. So it's a depleted DB and linebacker room, man. So hopefully, they use their magic. Pete and Patrick Graham figure it out. But just, maybe we should temper expectations a little bit just for that reason. Have a good one, Q.
Thank you for the call, my man. The linebacker room, the cornerback room, that's a question. That's a question moving into training camp, and obviously they're still pretty far from training camp. They've got OTAs going on today, mandatory mini camp at the beginning of June, the 10th through the 12th, and then they'll have they'll break for the summer and then go back for training camp. That could be an area that they address, right? Whether it's at the start of training camp, in the middle of training camp, when they see that they just don't have the depth there, then they don't think that they're going to get the production that they want. I'm not too sure. It's going to be interesting, but it's funny. I had the topic on my radio show the other day about what is it that will stop the Raiders from being successful in 2025. That would be your answer. The defense, the linebacking room and cornerback room in particular. And that very well could be the answer. There is a lot of unknown there. Now, you're hoping that with Patrick Graham, you're hoping with Robbie Leonard, those guys returning, you're hoping with Pete Carroll and his tutelage that he's able to get these guys coached up. But I do think it's valid to question what they're going to do. And look, they could still add a guy like a Jalen Ramsey. They could still add another linebacker if they want to. Gainer, I'm excited to see what Gainer brings to the table and if he can all of a sudden live up to the hype. When I saw him the other night at that Silver and Black Gala, man, he was so fired up, he couldn't stop smiling. He was so fired up and excited about what's to come and his role and what he could play. He might end up being a diamond in the rough that nobody's talking about right now that could end up really helping solve the problems that the Raiders have at the linebacker room right now. Obviously, time will tell, but thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider Morpheus. Hey, Q, can you name 5 guys from the core group of Raiders veterans that need to step up this season? These guys would be non-rookies and non-new free agents. The 5 guys I want to see step up would be 1, Christian Wilkins, 2, Michael Mayer, 3, Trey Tucker, 4, Tyree Wilson, and 5, Tommy Eichenberg. Please share your list, Q. Just win, baby. Raider Morpheus out. Thanks so much for the text. Appreciate you. And, yeah, I don't have that many guys that aren't on your list. I don't have that many different ones on my list. I got Christian Wilkins, obviously for big money. He was the guy that was brought in as the free agent last year to be a big difference maker. 5 games and he was out. So one, he's got to be healthy. He's got to be a difference maker, right? Adam Butler, I'm glad that he's back and has an opportunity to, have some more depth along that defensive tackle position and be that guy. So, there may be some heavy lifting on him, especially early on the season if they are easing Christian Wilkins into action. Jacorian Bennett, I'd like to see him as a third-year guy be healthy. He's been having a problem staying healthy throughout the course of his career so far, first 2 years in the league. Tyree Wilson, you mentioned him. I think that's a no-brainer. He was number 7 overall pick at one point 2 staffs ago, right? Dave Ziegler drafted him, not Tom Telesco, not John Spytek, but Dave Ziegler. So he's got to prove himself. He has no allies left in the building. Mike Mayer, Big Mike, he was traded for, or not traded for, but they traded up to get him in the second round, and he hasn't come to fruition yet. McDaniels, his first year, his rookie year, things didn't go good with him. Last year, he took a leave of absence. He was away from the team for personal reasons. Colton Miller, how about him, right? He started last year off really slow because he was coming back from injury, wasn't really up to speed, and he got better as the season went along. I'd like to see him get back to Colton Miller, right? Being the guy that we all remember, the guy that wants the contract extension, he wants some guaranteed money. I'd like to see him go out there and really earn that and show that, yeah, I'm not only not going anywhere now, I'm not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. But you can also go to guys like Malcolm Kuntz, DeCam Richardson, Trey Taylor, second-year guy at Air Force of safety, Isaiah Palomau, and now that he got the contract extension, how does he evolve as a safety? And then you can look at a couple 2-year guys, JPJ and DJ Glaze, along the offensive line. I'd like to see them take the next step as well. So really, I know it's more than you asked for, but there's a handful of guys that I could look for step up this year with the silver and black. We'll close things out with a call from Tadrees in New Jersey. He's calling to talk about the conversation that I was having with President Sandra Douglas Morgan about the positive feeling in the building, the great vibes, and how things definitely feel different. He's got a few thoughts on it. Here he is, Tadrees in New Jersey.
Hey, Q, this is Tadrees from New Jersey. My first call kind of got messed up, so I'm calling back. I just want to give, I'm on my morning walk this morning and listen to the podcast. And you're talking about things being different in the building, what Sarah Douglas Morgan said. And I'm pretty sure they felt that way about Antonio Pierce too. But, the key thing that she said, like ever since the new ownership group came in, I mean, look at our schedule release video. They was like, oh, look, it's John Spytek and Tom Brady walking outside, And, you see the GOAT, Spytek is walking with the GOAT, And it got me thinking when Tom Brady left the New England Patriots, no one saw him coming to Tampa Bay winning a chip. You know what I mean? Like, of all the teams that Tom Brady could have went to, San Francisco 49ers, he chose Tampa Bay. And then he got it done. No one saw the GOAT coming to the Raiders, a franchise that's been in the dirt. Why would a champion want to come to Las Vegas where they haven't won in years? He sees something, he has vision, and that vision is coming together. And I also want to clarify a text that I had sent back a couple of weeks ago, and you thought that I meant the hiring of John Spytek. I was talking about, if you can think of that name, that in the offseason, Mark Davis hired a guy responsible for building teams. He's just an advisor. You said on the podcast back in January, February, or something like that, that we hired an advisor that built championship teams. And he put together Andy Reid with that general manager. And then we saw he won a championship. He was with a couple other teams. And then Mark Davis hired him as an advisor. That hire right there needs to get all the praise in the world, because we're seeing that they've been making smart decisions ever since that first domino. Get it, Q? I know you love some dominoes. That first domino was set in place. All right, Q. Have a great day. Keep up the good job. Just win, baby.
Tadrees, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, my man. Great stuff, and great clarification on your text as well that you were talking about with that hiring committee that put the coaching staff and the GM together. And if you remember what he's talking about, back when they started looking for John Spytek and Pete Carroll, the Raiders hired Jed Hughes of the search firm Korn Ferry to help compile GM and head coach candidates. Hughes helped the placements of following head coaches: Pete Carroll with the Seahawks, Andy Reid with the Chiefs, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, and Bruce Arians with the Bucs. So all winners, right? All guys that have found ways to win. Pete Carroll, college and with the pros, winning championships. Andy Reid, obviously championships with Kansas City. Jim Harbaugh, national championship at Michigan. Bruce Arians, championship with the Buccaneers. So, you bring up a great point, and I hadn't really thought about that. But great stuff, man. Really good call. Definitely appreciate that. And like I said, appreciate the clarification as well. Matter of fact, that was a quick one, so we'll close out with one more call. EP in Seattle calling to share a funny story about a call he heard here on the podcast, and it made him spring into action. Here he is, EP in Seattle.
Yo, Q, it's EP in Seattle, man. Hope you're well. Hope the family's well. Appreciate everything you do. I just wanted to share a funny story. I'm one of those people that hollered at Tuck Rule Fool after you aired his message, and I was like, man, is this you? I had to track down his number through some people who knew some people because, like he said, a lot of people from the past were reaching out. I met Tuck in the comments section of the old IBA Buzz website that covered the Raiders. Do you remember that site? Jerry McDonald used to be the writer for it, and then Steve Corcoran took over for a while, and boy, it feels like, it wasn't the early days of the internet, but it was like probably 20 years ago, I feel like, at this point, and we were all in there, and you'd have thought that this was a subscription-based service. We were just, every time there was a new article, we were in there, we were talking about Raiders, and we just ran that thing until I think they finally shut down the comment section or something, as I recall. So then the community built its own site, and we moved around, and then someone got tired of that one, and then we moved to another one. But these bloggers were just big Raider fans. We called ourselves bloggers, but we were just, talking Raiders at each other all day, every day. I swear most of us had jobs, but you wouldn't know it because we were just always in there talking Raiders football. Anyway, as we jumped around a bunch of sites, eventually some people started to fall off or just kind of move on or things like that. But Tuck used to always be in there every year. The Raiders, EP, I go by EP, it stands for Eternal Pessimist because I'm a Raiders fan. And every year Tuck would be in there just dropping stats, doing this playoff pontification, and I would just be frustrated every year. And I'm like, man, this team is not a playoff team. Stop this nonsense. It just drove me nuts. But then all these years later, I hear Tuck Rule Fool on here dropping deep stats and playoff chances and all sorts of things. And I heard him, I think about a year ago, and I was like, man, that could not be a coincidence. And then I heard him this past week, and I was like, oh, man, I got to find it. So I reached out to a person I was still in contact, who was in with the person who's still in contact. I found his number, and lo and behold, we're reconnected, and now we're texting again about Raider stuff. So that's my story, man. I really appreciate you. Go Raiders!
EP, thanks for the call. That's an awesome story, my man. Right? We heard from Tuck Rule Fool that he said that he had people that were reaching out to him, didn't know that it was you or others, right? And just to see the kind of connection that we have here with the podcast and the kind of community that Raider Nation is, I always talk about it being a family, and that is the exact definition of that family. That is really awesome. Great story. Fantastic stuff. I'm glad that worked out the way it worked out. And that's going to do it for today's show. A little bit longer than it's supposed to. Sorry, Ari. Sorry, not sorry. Kind of do it all the time. The Raiders have their OTAs today. 10:30 to 12:15 is going to be practice. Pete Carroll and some coach and some players should be talking afterwards. I'm going to try to make my way over to the Intermountain Health Performance Center right after my show, Joe and Q on ESPN Radio. That's over at 12. So I'm going to try to make a beeline over there and get there in time to ask some questions to Pete Carroll and others. So wish me luck. We'll see if I can do it. But either way, we'll talk about it on tomorrow's show. We'll have more news and notes. We'll have plenty of conversation. Of course, your calls and texts as well. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.